Ethan Carter thought it was just another awkward blind date, until the woman sitting across from him smiled softly and said the words that froze his heart. "You don't remember me, do you?" Ethan was 36 years old, a successful architect who'd spent the last decade building other people's dreams while his own life remained empty. His best friend, Mike, had been pestering him for months to get back out there, to stop hiding behind blueprints and late-night meetings. One date, Mike had said, just one. Her name's Claire. She's a teacher. Kind, smart, beautiful. Trust me. So there Ethan sat on a Thursday evening at a cozy cafe in downtown Portland, nervously adjusting his collar and wondering why he'd agreed to this. The cafe had soft lighting, jazz music playing quietly in the background, and the smell of fresh coffee filling the air. When Claire walked in, Ethan's breath caught for a moment. She was beautiful in a quiet way. Shoulder-length brown hair, warm hazel eyes, and a gentle smile that seemed to light up the dim cafe. She wore a simple cream-colored sweater and jeans, nothing fancy, but she carried herself with a grace that made Ethan sit up straighter. "Ethan," she asked as she approached. "Claire," he said, standing to pull out her chair. "It's nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you, too," she said, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of recognition, of knowing, that confused him. They ordered coffee, made small talk about the weather, the cafe, Mike's terrible jokes. Claire laughed easily, asked thoughtful questions, and listened with genuine interest. Ethan found himself relaxing, enjoying the conversation more than he'd expected. But then, about 20 minutes in, Claire set down her coffee cup and looked at him with those warm eyes. Her smile turned softer, almost sad. "You don't remember me, do you?" she asked quietly. Ethan felt his heart skip. He studied her face more carefully, the curve of her smile, the way she tilted her head when she spoke. Something about her did feel familiar, like a song he'd heard long ago but couldn't quite place. I'm sorry," Ethan said, feeling embarrassed. "Have we met before?" Claire nodded slowly. "We have. A long time ago. 14 years ago, actually." Ethan's mind raced. 14 years? That would have been when he was in college, just finishing his architecture degree. He tried to remember. Had she been in one of his classes? A friend? Someone he'd met at a party? "I don't want to make you feel bad," Claire said gently, seeing the confusion on his face. "It was just one day, one moment, really, but for me, it changed everything." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, leaning forward. Claire took a breath, her hands wrapping around her warm coffee cup as if drawing comfort from it. "Do you remember a girl at Lincoln University? A freshman who used to sit alone in the library every day?" Ethan's brow furrowed. Lincoln University. That's where he'd gone to school. The library. He'd spent countless hours there working on projects, studying for exams. "I sat alone because I didn't have any friends," Claire continued, her voice soft but steady. "I was shy, anxious. I just moved from a small town, and the big campus terrified me. Most days I felt invisible." Ethan felt something stirring in his memory, like fog slowly lifting. One afternoon in October, Claire said, her eyes distant now, lost in the past, something happened. "Something that made me want to tell you tonight, that you saved my life." Ethan's breath stopped. His coffee cup hovered halfway to his lips, forgotten. "What?" But Claire just smiled a sad, grateful smile and said, "Let me tell you a story." And as the cafe sounds faded into background, Ethan found himself transported back to a rainy afternoon 14 years ago, to a moment he'd long forgotten, but one that had defined someone else's entire life. Claire's voice was soft as she spoke, but every word carried weight. It was October 15th, 2010, a Tuesday. It was raining. Ethan closed his eyes, and suddenly he was there, 22 years old, rushing across campus with his backpack over his head, trying to avoid the downpour. He'd had a major project due the next morning and needed to get to the library. "I was sitting in my usual spot," Claire continued. "Third floor, by the window overlooking the quad. I always sat there because no one else wanted to. It was too cold in winter, too hot in summer. But I liked it because I could see people passing by. It made me feel less alone. Ethan remembered that spot. He'd walked past it dozens of times. That day, Claire said, her voice catching slightly, I got a phone call from home. My mom told me my little brother had been in an accident. He was okay, but it scared me. I felt so far from home, so helpless, and I was already struggling. My grades were slipping. I had no friends. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. She paused, taking a sip of her coffee. Ethan waited, his heart pounding. I sat there for hours, just staring out the window, watching the rain. And I started thinking, what if I just left? What if I just disappeared? Would anyone even notice? Ethan felt a chill run through him. He knew where this was going, and it terrified him. I packed up my things, Claire said. I walked down the stairs. I was going to leave campus, go to the bridge near the river, and... She trailed off, but Ethan understood. His memory was coming back now, sharper and clearer. He remembered rushing into the library that rainy afternoon, soaking wet, frustrated about his project. He'd taken the stairs 2 at a time, heading to the 3rd floor where the architecture books were kept. And then he'd seen her, a young woman with long brown hair, walking down the stairs with tears streaming down her face. She looked lost, broken, like a ghost moving through the world. You stopped me, Claire said, bringing him back to the present. Right there on the stairwell between the 2nd and 3rd floor. You looked at me and said, Hey, are you okay? Ethan's breath caught. He remembered now. He remembered the girl with the tear-stained face. Most people would have kept walking, Claire said. Most people would have looked away, pretended they didn't see. But you stopped. You looked right at me and asked if I was okay. What did you say? Ethan asked quietly, though he was starting to remember. I said I was fine, Claire said, smiling sadly. I lied like people do, but you didn't believe me. You said, You don't look fine. Do you want to talk? Ethan closed his eyes. He could hear his younger self saying those words, could feel the instinct that had made him stop instead of walking past. I told you no, Claire continued. I said I just needed to go. But you wouldn't let me leave. Not like that. You said something I'll never forget. You said, whatever you're going through, it's temporary. But the decision you make in the next hour could be permanent. Please, just sit with me for a minute. Tears were forming in Claire's eyes now, and Ethan felt his own throat tightening. We sat on those stairs for 2 hours, Claire said. You missed your class. I later found out you missed your project deadline. Because of me, you just sat there and listened. You didn't try to fix me. You didn't give me empty advice. You just listened. Ethan did remember now. The girl who'd been so sad, so lost. He'd been worried about her. Had asked her name, but she'd said she didn't want to share it. Said she just needed someone to be present. You told me about a time in high school when you felt invisible, Claire said. About how you almost dropped out, but one teacher believed in you. You said that sometimes all we need is for one person to see us, to really see us. And then you walked me back to my dorm, Claire continued, wiping her eyes. You made me promise to call the campus counseling center the next morning. You even wrote down the number for me. And before you left, you said, the world needs you in it. I don't know you, but I know that much is true. Ethan felt tears rolling down his own cheeks now. He remembered all of it. The scared girl on the stairs. The 2 hours of just being present. The walk back to her dorm in the rain. I called the counseling center the next day, Claire said. I got help. I started therapy. I joined a support group. I made friends. I graduated. And I became a teacher because I wanted to be that person for others, the one who sees them when they feel invisible. Claire, Ethan whispered. You saved my life that day, Ethan, Claire said, her voice full of emotion. And you never even knew it. They sat in silence for a moment, both overwhelmed by the weight of the memory. The cafe continued around them. People talking, coffee machines humming, jazz playing softly. But in their corner, time seemed to have stopped. "I looked for you afterward," Claire said. "I wanted to thank you, but I realized I never got your last name. You were just Ethan, the stranger on the stairs who saw me when I was invisible." Ethan wiped his eyes, not caring that other people in the cafe might be watching. "I thought about you, too, for weeks after. I wondered if you were okay, if you'd gotten help, but I never saw you again. I transferred to a different dorm," Claire explained, "and I started taking different routes across campus. I needed a fresh start, but I never forgot you. I never forgot what you did." "How did you find me?" Ethan asked. Claire smiled. "I didn't. Mike did. I met him at a teacher's conference 6 months ago. We became friends, and one day I was telling him this story about the stranger who saved my life in college. I didn't know his last name, just that he was an architecture student named Ethan." Ethan's eyes widened. "Mike knew." "Mike figured it out," Claire said, nodding. "He asked me what school, what year. When I told him, he got this look on his face and said, 'I think I know exactly who you're talking about.' He showed me your picture, and I knew immediately. It was you. So this whole blind date was Mike trying to bring us back together," Claire finished. "He didn't tell me his plan. Just said he had someone he wanted me to meet. I didn't know it was you until I walked in tonight and saw you sitting here." Ethan laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and disbelief. "Mike, you brilliant idiot." "I almost didn't come," Claire admitted. "When I realized it was you, I almost turned around and left. I was scared. What if you didn't remember? What if I made you uncomfortable? What if—" "I'm glad you stayed," Ethan interrupted gently. "So glad." They looked at each other across the small table, and something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but something deeper. Recognition, gratitude, connection. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said. "Anything." "Why did you stop that day?" Most people would have just kept walking. Ethan thought about it. "When I was 17, I tried to end my life." Claire's eyes widened. "I was struggling," Ethan continued. "Depression, anxiety, feeling like I'd never be good enough. One night, I wrote a note and took a bottle of pills. But my mom came home early from work. She found me, called 911, and I woke up in a hospital." "Ethan," Claire whispered, "a therapist in that hospital sat with me for hours. Just talked to me about life, about pain, about how temporary feelings are compared to permanent decisions. He saved my life. And I promised myself that if I ever saw someone who looked like I felt that night, I'd stop. I'd be present. I'd be what he was for me." Claire reached across the table and took his hand. "You kept that promise." "I did," Ethan said, "but I never knew if it mattered. I never knew if that girl on the stairs was okay. Until tonight." "I'm more than okay," Claire said, squeezing his hand. "I'm alive. I'm happy. I help kids every day who feel invisible, and I tell them what you told me, that the world needs them in it." Ethan felt overwhelming emotion wash over him. For years, he'd wondered about that girl. Had she gotten help? Had she survived? Had those 2 hours on a rainy stairwell made any difference? Now he knew, and knowing changed everything. "I need to tell you something," Claire said. "When Mike set this up, I thought maybe it was just about closure, about finally getting to say thank you. But sitting here with you now, I realize it's more than that." "What do you mean?" "I've thought about you for 14 years, Claire said. "Not every day, but often. You were the stranger who saw me when I needed to be seen. And now here you are, not a stranger anymore. And I find myself wondering, what if this is meant to be more than just closure?" Ethan's heart raced. He looked at Claire, really looked at her, and saw not just the scared girl from the stairs, but the strong, compassionate woman she'd become. And he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Maybe," Ethan said softly. "We were meant to find each other again. not as strangers on a stairwell, but as two people who understand what it means to be saved. Claire smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. I'd like that. Me too. 6 months later, Ethan and Claire stood together at a community event for suicide prevention awareness. They'd been asked to speak about their story, about how one moment of kindness 14 years ago had created a ripple effect that was still spreading. Claire spoke first, telling the story of the girl on the stairs. Her voice was strong, confident, so different from the scared freshman she'd once been. I tell you this story not to make anyone feel guilty for the times they've walked past someone in pain, Claire said to the crowd, but to show you that one moment of genuine care can change a life. Ethan didn't know he was saving me that day. He just knew I needed someone, and that was enough. When Ethan spoke, he talked about his own struggles, his own darkness, and the therapist who pulled him back from the edge. We all carry invisible battles, Ethan said, and we never know who around us is fighting for their life. But if we choose to see people, really see them, we might just be the light that guides them through their darkest moment. After the event, as they walked through the park where the gathering had been held, Claire slipped her hand into Ethan's. It had become natural over the past 6 months, this comfortable connection between them. Their relationship had grown slowly, carefully, built on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. They'd gone on real dates, shared meals, talked for hours about everything and nothing. They'd learned each other's quirks, their dreams, their fears. Claire had met Ethan's mother, who'd cried when she heard the story of the girl on the stairs, grateful her son had become the kind of person who stopped to help. Ethan had visited Claire's classroom, watching her interact with her students with patience and kindness, seeing how she noticed the quiet ones, the ones sitting alone, the ones who needed to be seen. Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if you just kept walking that day? Claire asked as they sat on a park bench, watching the sunset. Sometimes, Ethan admitted, but then I remember what my therapist told me after I tried to end my life. He said, "You're not here by accident. Every person you meet, every choice you make, it all matters. It all means something." He was right, Claire said. The scary thing is, I almost didn't stop, Ethan confessed. I was late. I was stressed about my project. I saw you crying, and my first instinct was to keep walking. But something made me pause. Some voice inside said, "Stop. She needs you." I'm glad you listened to that voice. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from blue to pink to orange. Ethan thought about the journey that brought them here, his own darkness, the therapist who'd save him, the random afternoon he'd stop for a crying girl, the 14 years of wondering, and the blind date that had brought them back together. You know what's amazing? Claire said, Mike thinks he brought us together. But really, we brought ourselves together. Years ago on a rainy stairwell. He just helped us find each other again. Ethan smiled. We should thank him. We should, Claire agreed. But not too much. His ego's big enough. They laughed, and it felt good. Easy, right? Ethan, Claire said, turned to face him. I need you to know something. When I walked into that cafe 6 months ago and saw you, I was nervous. I'd built you up in my mind for so long as this hero, this perfect stranger. I was afraid the real you wouldn't live up to the memory. And Ethan asked, his heart beating faster. The real you is so much better, Claire said, her eyes shining. You're kind, yes, but you're also funny and smart and imperfect and real. You're not the stranger on the stairs anymore. You're Ethan, and I'm falling in love with Ethan. Ethan felt his throat tighten with emotion. I'm falling in love with you too. Not because you're the girl I saved, but because of who you've become. You're strong and compassionate, and you make me want to be better. They kissed then, soft and sweet, as the sun set behind them and the park lights began to flicker on. Later that evening, as Ethan drove Claire home, she said something that would stay with him forever. You know what I realized today? When you stopped for me on those stairs, you didn't just save my life. You saved yours too. Because that moment, that choice to help someone else, it kept you connected to your own humanity. It reminded you why you survived. You saved me, and in doing so, you save yourself. Ethan pulled over, too overwhelmed to keep driving. He looked at Claire with tears in his eyes. I never thought about it that way. We saved each other, Claire said simply. 14 years ago and every day since. They sat in the car, holding hands, understanding that their story wasn't about fate or coincidence. It was about choice. The choice to stop, the choice to see, the choice to care, the choice to show up, even when it's hard, even when it's easier to look away. That night, Ethan called his mother and told her he was happy. Really, truly happy. And when she asked why, he said, because I'm learning that the moments we think are small, the times we choose kindness over convenience, those are the moments that matter most. His mother, who'd found him on that terrible night 17 years ago and refused to let him go, said, I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. So proud. And Ethan realized something beautiful. He'd spent years wondering if his life had purpose, if his survival meant something. Now he knew. Every person he'd helped, every moment he'd chosen to see someone in pain, every time he'd stopped instead of walking past, it all mattered. It all meant something. Because sometimes life brings back the people we've forgotten, not to remind us of who we were, but to show us who we become. And sometimes the person we save ends up saving us right back. That's not just fate. That's the quiet magic of choosing kindness, again and again, until kindness chooses you. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video. It helps us share more beautiful stories like this one. Subscribe for more emotional stories about love, kindness, and fate. And tell us in the comments, do you believe everything happens for a reason?